So, thank you very much. I've inspired myself this morning. Running is clearly the theme. I've been to Philly before, but I've never been up those steps. And so I went up the steps 3 times. And the thing about those steps is they're not just any old steps. They're steps that carry some meaning. And they're steps that have emotion wrapped around them and feelings wrapped around them. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about intimacy, which you might find a strange subject to come from an Englishman. But whilst things are changing, we've just heard from Chuck and the changes that this world is going through. There are some things that aren't, and that's the human being. So I want to talk a little bit about how we answer that question that he raised. How do we have meaningful and relevant engagement with human beings? And my business for the last 10 years has focused on that question, and our point of view has been around innovation. And that's really what I want to touch on today. And really, we're more of an innovation business, an insight business. If you're confused by our name and our branding and all of that, we haven't done a very good job because recently we were acquired by Omnicom, and we're now merging with Communispace. So I know there's many, including Campbell's, so there's many Communispace clients in the room. Just let me tell you a couple of things. So Promise, we're pioneers in co-creation. And those are some of the clients that we work with. Communispace are pioneers in online communities. So we now have a client base that looks something like this. And we're trying to put these 2 ideas of insight and innovation together. And the 2 questions I'd like to cover today are thinking about inspiring the future and innovation. Why does it seem so difficult? Why is it so difficult for organizations to look at the future and create breakthrough products and services? And secondly, I'd just like to provide some of my experience over the last 20 or so years of some of the things that have worked for my organization and the clients that we work with. So let's get into this. So the stock answer is about inspiring the future. Oh, we've got a genius as a CEO, or not. Yeah, so the old-fashioned view was that inspiring the future was all about the expert, about the genius, and as long as we had one of these people, then everything was going to be fine because they were going to lead us into the future. Most organizations, 95% of organizations, don't have a leader like this. So innovation has to be more kind of systemic within the culture and the structures of the organization, and that makes it pretty hard. I think this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build temporary monopolies. That's what the iPad was. I think most organizations are out there looking to find a niche with consumers where they can generate some demand for a period of time. But they know that in the world we live in of fast followers and technological change and speed, et cetera, they're not going to keep that monopoly for very long. So that's what I'd like to talk about. How do we find these temporary monopolies? Is it working with the experts? Is it, how do we do it? It's tough. When, you're all facing something like this, there is more and more choice. There's more fast followers. When, anyone recognize this person? I mean, consumers nowadays are more and more demanding. They want to be engaged in the way they want to be engaged. They can buy whatever they want, whenever they want, wherever they want, at virtually whatever price they want. So the shift that began probably before the photograph in the 1950s and 60s that we saw, the shift that started with the manufacturers being in charge has now swung completely to the consumer being in charge. So how do you deal? How do you create temporary monopolies when the consumer is really in charge and you've got factories or costs that are out there looking for new revenue streams, new temporary monopolies? And of course, it gets really difficult because all the executives we work with want facts. They want data. They don't like dealing with messy feelings, consumers. Oh, can't you just tell me, I want facts. Well, of course, to consumers, feelings are facts. We make nearly all the decisions in our lives based on feelings, not facts. So I know most of the facts about my wife. Yeah, I know how tall she is, I know her weight, I know her shoe size. Doesn't always help me understand her feelings. Yeah, I kind of get that wrong quite often, but I'm working on it. Yeah, so consumers, human beings, are based on emotions and feelings. So how do we, as huge organizations with all that change that we just saw going on in the last presentation, how do we get to understand people's motivation and feelings? At a time when there's absolutely no time to think, executives are stressed out, we're all stressed out, we don't sleep, we're answering phones all the time, etc., etc. There's so much noise, there's so much data. I don't know if you've thought about this, but most of us like to think of ourselves as pretty smart and knowledgeable. Have you thought about this? With more data, the explosion of data, we're all becoming progressively more ignorant. That's a really scary thought. We're becoming progressively more ignorant. So how do we deal with this? I mean, big data, I know we're going to hear an awful lot about big data, and I'm sure there are some answers sitting in there. And we're going to hear a lot about speed and getting to market fast. We all have to do that. But how do we deal with these sorts of questions? And of course, human beings hate change. So the organizations we all work for really, at the end of the day, don't much like change. So I can see a lady sitting here with her arms folded. Have you ever done this one where you've been asked to move the way you fold your arms the other way round? I mean, I don't know if you ever try it. Just try that. Yeah, I mean, I almost can't do it. Yeah, I've learnt so much about how I fold my arms or how I shave every morning or how I do everything I do. I've almost forgotten how I operate. And organizations are a little bit like that too. They've forgotten how they operate. They just do so many things. They take so many things for granted, so many facts for granted. You must have seen this. What does that say? You've seen it. So I love Paris in the springtime. Yeah, really easy. But it says, I love Paris in the springtime. So I think we know an awful lot about our products. I think we know an awful lot about what our consumers think about our products. We know an awful lot about our finances within our business. But what we don't always know is much about people's lives. So in my experience, when organizations start to find out about what's going on in people's lives and stop talking about their products and services, breakthroughs happen. That's when breakthroughs happen. When you stop talking about yourself and you start listening really hard to what consumers are looking for. And my goodness, are there plenty of opportunities out there at the moment for new products and services. So let me give you 5 thoughts about how this can work. So the first thing is you need to create real relationships. You cannot do this if you think you are better the consumer. You need to approach them with empathy, with humility, and with curiosity. And that's not just the people in this room. That's the people who make the decisions within organizations. People who sit in the C-suite need to understand the lives of their consumers and where value can be driven, as well as the products and services within their organization. So here's an example. So what do you think this is? Anyone got any ideas as to what this might be? Shopping center, office block? Any other thoughts? Hospital. This is a hospital. It's in Detroit. It's called the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. And it started by a rather remarkable man who said he went out and spent time with the people the hospital had to serve. So he was hired from Ritz-Carlton, which is a strange place to hire someone who runs a hospital. And some of you may have he presents quite regularly. It's quite a brilliant story. He went out and he took dinner around to people who lived in the local communities. So all the local communities around Detroit. And he went out for weeks and weeks and weeks on end and just had dinner with them and said, what do you want out of a hospital? And what he established out of that is that they wanted a community center for wellness, not sickness. So that was his insight. And he gained the insight by doing the work himself, by getting on a level with people and just going and talking to them about what they were really looking for. So this particular hospital now has a fantastic restaurant, which is a community restaurant. So people come in from outside. It's got kids coming in to the greenhouse and the gardens, learning about vegetables and what they look like. And apparently they're even running weddings out of this hospital now. So, there you go. But there was a breakthrough because he got to really understand what was missing in people's lives. Secondly, as Gerard, the guy behind this, you have to ask a big question. You cannot ask, do you want this one or this one, to find out what's important in people's lives. I was lucky enough to be involved in the breakthrough that created these. So those were the very first flat beds in business class. And I can tell you, when these things started, hopefully some of you have slept in these things now. This was 2001. It gave British Airways at least a 5-year temporary monopoly. But I can tell you, they nearly died in doing this. They spent more money trying to stop the project than they did on pushing the project through initially. There was so much resistance to change. The paradigm was, rip a load of seats out, and put more seats in, you make more money. You rip a load of seats out, people just don't know what to do with themselves. You can't do that. People were saying, you cannot do that. It breaks the paradigm. You mustn't do it. You have to listen really hard. When we talk about listening for possibility, I have executives who said, senior executives said, please don't come and tell me that consumers in my hotel, this is 5 years ago, want free internet. Please don't tell me that. I've been hearing it. Don't tell me. I don't want to know. And we hear this all over the place. Please don't tell me this. I've heard it 100 times. So do something about it. Listen to the possibility. Why are they asking for this? So listen to the possibility. When I walk at home, when my kids were young, I used to get home and I'd come home late. And my wife would bitch and moan at me, and I would go, no, but I'm out there trying to make it happen. And actually, I started listening for the possibility. Actually, what she was saying is, your kids love you. They want to see you. So I started thinking, okay. If I think of it like that, I've got a solution to this. But too much of what we hear about the pain points in industries are negative, and we see them as negative, but we've got to see these pain points as possibility. I'm going to leave this example because I'm running. Together. Invent together. So I really believe that invention is a collaborative pursuit. The Beatles were better together. Yeah, most people are better. The idea of there being this single genius, and consumers are great inventors. Okay, here's a quick example. Big hotel chain in the Middle East. This is why doesn't make sense. Management team said that our innovation of the future is going to be about 7-star yachts and cruise liners, and it's going to be about our own private airline. So when we talk to their customers, what do they say? Free internet and cheaper fees. I mean, how wrong have gone if we'd done it with the management team. They still want to do what's here on the left, but, you know. And finally, I'm just going to show you a very, very short piece of film. The answer is in playing and dreaming. This work is about discovering where people keep their dreams. So as insight professionals, this is our job, to discover where people keep their dreams. Okay, and this is an example of the work we do with British Airways, and it's a live event. We do this work both live and in the digital world, but this is a live event. The C-suite are here. Let me just show you this for 2 minutes. Steve. I'm done now. This is very short. Playing, and people are trying to create whatever the equivalent of the next flatbed is. But the important thing about this is one of the difficulties we all have is with engagement. How do we engage the senior people in organizations? We have to involve them in understanding people's lives and where they keep their dreams. Thank you very much.